Hi, my name is Daisy, and today I'm going to talk about my struggles, my successes, and the lessons I learned in translating a children's book called Walter the White Crayon into Spanish. First, I'm going to start off with what went horribly wrong. My first step to starting off this translation was making a term base. So I intended to use Termine as a good tool to help me identify eligible words for my term base, and so in order to do that, I needed to convert the PDF file I had received into a text format. Against my better judgment, I tried turning it into a Google Doc first, and that did not turn out very well. The text was broken up and all over the place, and because of the many spaces in the PDF file, almost nothing was legible. I Googled other sources I could use, and one result was to use PDF Simplify, which required I register, so I didn't go down that road. Using Adobe Acrobat was my best option, but still not the best one. As you can see, there were still tons of misspelled words and added spaces that weren't there before. I decided to run it through Termine anyway, in the little hope that it would still give me something useful. Unfortunately, it didn't. I couldn't use any of the exact words that were highlighted because they were all wrong, but it gave me a general idea of where to look for terms I could use. I then created my term base on Omega T. Granted, it is a little bit difficult to create a term base and create a list of vocabulary words or a glossary with very little words to work with, but I thought I would do a better job than this. But I went the easier route and just looked for the words myself. Creating the glossary on Omega T was a lot easier, but I think I spent too much time trying to figure this out and focusing on this one first aspect, but it was still a good lesson to learn, knowing how to prioritize my time and my research. And I know that I won't make the same mistake in the future, now knowing what tools I should use. Next, using the wrong program. Using the wrong program and having the wrong file type. My sister-in-law Katie, the illustrator of the book, was the one to share the file with me. She suggested that the easiest way to send it to me would be as a PDF file, so I accepted it that way. I didn't really question it. I figured I could play around with it enough to know how to edit it. Opening the file on Adobe Acrobat let me edit it, but not the way I wanted it to. I could edit the text just fine, but it didn't have the font that was being used in the book. Part of the reason I needed those different fonts was because she still hadn't finalized what font she was going to use, so I wanted to facilitate the process of having the different font options in Spanish so she didn't have to go through the trouble of editing it again. So I tried opening the PDF file in Adobe InDesign, but it would not let me open it. Luckily, I just asked Katie for the file as an InDesign file, and it worked just fine. This is a screenshot of what it looked like as I was working on the translation in InDesign, and it looked a lot better, and I was able to send Katie the file in the same file type so that she could edit it a lot easier once she finalized the illustrations on her end. Now, for things that went well. Only a few things went smoothly. The translation of the text was fairly easy, especially after figuring out the term base. I simply used Omega T, and I used the list of resources that I said I would use for the actual translating process, and the term base came into use. I used the Hispanic speakers that I already knew to be able to know if something sounded natural, if I needed to change something, and I changed my glossary as I went along in that process. I feel pretty confident in the translation and how it actually turned out in the end. I think that that Spanish-speaking children would really appreciate having this unique book, and I think that parents will really appreciate having this resource to teach their children to love literature. Something else that went really well was having good communication with Katie. It was very helpful because when I needed a different file type, or when I had questions concerning the translation, or when I had questions regarding how she wanted to format the illustrations or a specific page in the book, or any actual content, I was easily able to talk to her and see what her vision was for everything, and we were able to work well together. And the last thing, many times Spanish text will end up being longer than English text, and that was particularly important in this book because it is a children's book with illustrations that have to be worked around, but this worked out really well. There weren't too many changes that needed to be made, and I was really happy with how it turned out. Now, lessons learned. Number 1, Don't spend too much time on a tiny task. I understand that right now was very much of a learning process, and in the future I'll know what resources to use and which ones not to use. But it was a very tedious thing to do. Number 2, ask for the right file type and use the right program. Again, I know this was a learning process, but I feel a lot better knowing what file types I need to use whenever I do work with something similar. And number 3, it's really nice to have someone to have direct contact with. I know this is something that sometimes doesn't happen, but having had the illustrator and the author as people that I knew personally and people whose phone numbers I had was really helpful in working with this translation. Thanks for watching!